sustainability means to us after COVID-19? This is a question that is always on our mind now. So today we'll share a bit about the consumer that's post-COVID-19. So what are the key features of such consumers after COVID-19 in terms of their conscientious effort in personal hygiene, rising personal care awareness, nomadic travelers, symptoms, etc., etc. So this is a very interesting article that I came across back in the 1st of April. So this is a post by Bangkok Post newspaper itself. It has a very insightful statement that I'll re-quote it. The outbreak will redefine globalism, make us accountable, and make travel a richer experience, but in smaller numbers. This statement essentially points out to three key features of what would we expect from consumers post-COVID-19. First and foremost, they are going to be much more conscious about their own personal hygiene. There is also going to be a rising personal care awareness among the consumers. And lastly, people will still travel after COVID-19, but the way they travel, the way they expect products that they carry when they travel is going to change a little. So if you are interested, do Google for this article as well. So first thing, I can say most of us would agree that right now, everyone take a much more conscientious effort to wash their hands no matter where they are, because we want to take care of ourselves. We want to make sure that we are not infected with the virus, etc. So we would definitely pay much more attention to our own personal hygiene. But one thing about washing our hands this period of time is that we would like to wash our hands more often. But let's say if when we travel, it is always challenging for us to carry a soap bar with us anywhere we go. And soap bar may not be present anywhere as well. So in this case, we recommend, this is a project that was actually initiated back in Vietnam. So customers were asking, oh, how can we carry a soap anywhere we go? It has to be very hygienic, convenient to them as well. So we developed a paper soap formulation. And this type of paper soap formulation allows us to carry the products anywhere we go. It's very light to travel. We do not have to carry the entire bar of soap, but rather just tiny pieces of soap paper, and then we'll just use it. So it's very convenient for us to carry along with us, very convenient to use as well. It's very light. We can choose how many pieces of paper soap we carry with us. And finally, because each piece of paper is meant for per use application, so it's a very hygienic way of handling this product as well. So if we take a look at this formulation, this is an antimicrobial paper soap. So the formulation is really pretty simple as well. If you take a look, it consists of the different fatty acid as what we would have expected from any soap product. It includes your lauric acid, myristic acid, palmitic acid, stearic acid, etc., etc. Likewise, you will have amino acid surfactants in conjunction with your fatty acid soap. So why is this important? Not only does amino acid surfactants contribute to a better foam feel, a better washing effect, but we do find that amino acid surfactants has this ability to have antimicrobial activities. So this is something that is of interest to us, and this will allow the manufacturers to make certain claims, for example. So besides the fatty acid and amino acid surfactants that we use for cleansing purposes, we have included in as well glycerin as humectant, propylene glycol as a solvent, ethanol as a solvent, etc. So it is a very simple basic soap formulation with the incorporation of amino acid surfactants. So why would we, how do we attribute the antimicrobial effect? It is mainly due to our amino acid surfactants. There are already studies to show that amino acid surfactants can inhibit the growth of your bacteria, yeast, and mold, etc., etc. So if you see here, there is the different bacteria as well as yeast, molds, etc., etc. And we do see that there's the minimal inhibitory concentration, which we call MIC. What it means is that this is the minimum amount of surfactants in terms of ppm that you will need in order to ensure there's no growth in bacteria and yeast and mold, etc. So against all these bacteria such as E. coli, and then you have the uh, Apirogia niger. So we have tested the entire spectrum of bacteria, yeast, and mold with the different amino acid surfactants, and they range from the glycinate samples, which is the sodium lauryl glycinate. You have the sodium cocoglycinate, sodium cocoglutamate, sodium myristate glutamate, as well as sodium lauryl glutamate. So we tested the different bacteria, yeast, and mold together with the amino acid surfactants, mainly the glycinates as well as the glutamates. And we do find some very good results that we can share with you all. For example, this is the studies that we have used. These are the bacteria and yeast molds, etc. So originally, as we see from the day zero, we have placed bacteria on a plate itself, and we count the microbial activity on the plate. So we dope it. You can see all the activity are listed here. They are present. Likewise, this is the bar chart that shows it actually also. So you see that we have tested against a range of bacteria, yeast, and mold. That's on day one. Against the different amino acid surfactants, which include the sodium lauryl glutamate, sodium cocoglutamate, as well as sodium cocoglycinate. So these are the three materials: sodium lauryl glutamate, sodium cocoglutamate, as well as sodium cocoglycinate. So for all of these amino acid surfactants that we test against this bacteria, yeast, and mold, we came up with the same results, which is at day zero, before we added in the amino acid surfactants, there are bacteria, of course, due to the fact that we added them in. But when we added amino acid surfactants onto the same plate, we see that immediately it is suppressed. There's no more bacteria, yeast, and mold that we can find on the plate itself. It becomes very minute amount. So, and this phenomenon we observe over the course of 28 days, mounting to a month. And the same results we achieve for the different amino acid surfactants give us the same conclusion. The amino acid surfactants such as glycinates and glutamates are able to suppress bacteria, yeast, and mold, which is very good results. So besides the antimicrobial effect from the amino acid surfactants, there is also going to be the next key point about consumer post-COVID-19. One particular phenomenon we observe within the last 3 months is that there's a lot of communication over materials, not only about personal care hygiene, but also personal care itself. So there is a rising personal care awareness. We do see a lot of articles being shared about these ingredients. If I use it, what's the benefit? What is the potential hazard? And these are shared very readily with the many social media channels that's available to us, especially during lockdown this period. We still want to reach out to the world. So one of the key things that we've been doing is we do a lot of internet communication over the WhatsApp, over Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, WeChat even. So there's many different communication channels that we pass on information from one to the other. So the dissemination of such information about personal care becomes one of the phenomenally highest ranking topic currently. So there are a lot of we do find that there's a lot of changes in the world currently, but that also means a lot of opportunities in the upcoming years as well. So there's a lot of opportunities in the rapidly changing world. We do know that the trend for global natural and organic personal care market is projected to reach a USD of 25 billion by 5 years time. Likewise, the revenue for hair care itself is going to reach 6.62 billion by 2025. So all of them are going to rise phenomenally high. So we know one of the key things that one of the key features that has been highlighted when they share about ingredients or any of the product that's used by themselves, used by their friends, etc. They would like it to be more natural, more organic. So one of the key features that we highlight for amino acid surfactants, of course, is that it is very natural chemistry. And that's why amino acid surfactants has been getting much more popularity over the course of last 3 years. If you take a look, a lot of this material, such as your sodium lauryl glutamate, sodium cocoa glutamate, sodium cocoa alaniate, all of them have a 100% natural origin index, which we can share with the customers. So very easily, the same information can be passed down to the consumers to say that they are using products that is 100% originally natural. So besides that, we have the rest of the materials such as your glycinates, which is 74% natural. You have the sodium lauryl sarcosinate, which is also 70% natural. So there's a lot of the natural chemistry that's out there recently that's being used in the market. And they are featured much more prominently within just the last 6 months over internet. So besides that, the other materials in a personal care formulation, such as your chelating agents, your preservative, your moisturizer, emollient, conditioner, etc., we do see the same trend that consumers are expecting their material to be much more natural. And why? We were also wondering, oh, is it just a concept that they are looking for, or what else are they looking for when they seek out words like natural for their products? So one of the key characteristics that we observe about natural products is they are moving away from sulfate-free material. They're moving out of sulfated materials, moving into a sulfate-free formulation that they're looking for. And why do they do that? It's because recently there is a lot of information being shared about if I would like to clean my hands much more often, but am I using the right ingredients to clean my hands? And some of the key points that were brought up when they highlight the different personal care formulations, particularly about the range of products, is currently a lot of the product uses sodium lauryl sulfate, or what we know as SLES, sodium lauryl ether sulfate. So such product, one of the point that was brought up is this material contains dioxane as a byproduct. And what is dioxane? Dioxane is a carcinogenic material. In other words, it can cause cancer. So, oh, am I washing using unsafe products then? And there is also another aspect coming in also, information from the regulatory that says for any of the personal care products in Asia, for the ASEAN cosmetic bodies, by 5 years time, the maximum amount of your dioxin that you can find in a product should not exceed 10 ppm maximum. So that creates another form of information, another channel for consumers to share such information to say, oh, does my product contain SLES? Is it bad for me? So that is one of the key reasons why the consumers start to move into alternative surfactants to use rather than our traditional sodium lauryl sulfate, which contains dioxin. But besides SLES, we do observe other sulfate materials also carrying some sort of issues with them at this moment. So they are of concern to different countries. So for example, right beside it, we have the sodium methyl sulfurate. This particular material is very commonly known as a methyl ester sulfonate, or MES in short. So this same material, as we see here, methyl ester sulfonate, is currently banned in 2 countries specifically, and that is Japan as well as Thailand for personal care application. And why is that so? Because for this particular sulfurate chemistry, it contains a byproduct. The byproduct is methanol. Methanol is a toxic alcohol. It is a residue from the manufacturing process, and you cannot remove 100% of it. There is going to be a range of methanol content in your methyl ester sulfonate, which can range between, let's say, 1% of ppm, etc. So different materials might carry different content of this methanol, which is unsafe for consumers. So there's a lot of information shared in Thailand and Japan about such materials. So at the end, the government, the body decided that they will ban this material for any personal care use. So because for their personal care products, for Japan, they have already stipulated that there should contain 0 amount of methanol. So that's one of the key concern here that we find. Thailand, the government also tightened the rules as well. So we find the same situation occurring in Southeast Asia to say that, oh, I cannot have a product that contains methanol in my formulation. The last product that we share, sodium olefin sulfonate. This is another sulfonate chemistry. If we take a look at it, all these material have certain ingredients that's not favorable. For alpha olefin sulfonate itself, which is sodium olefin sulfonate, it contains a byproduct we know as saltones. Saltone is also known to cause cancer, which is a carcinogenic material. So as we see here, we do find that there is a lot of information shared about the sulfur-related chemistry that may potentially cause some issue when we use it. That is one of the reasons why consumers are moving towards natural chemistry to avoid sulfur-related. So as a general term, now we call it a sulfate-free formulation trend that we do observe within the last 5 years, I would say, that's getting very popular in Asia. Previously, the same trend is also observed in countries like US and Europe also. So I think this is much more a global trend. Okay, so why the amino acid surfactants then? If I take a look at our traditional material that we use as a cleansing surfactants, SLES, the raw material that we use is fatty alcohol, EO ethylene oxide, together with sulfur trioxide. So these are the main ingredients we use. There is always going to be a byproduct, dioxin. Dioxin, we know, is a carcinogenic material. And the regulatory bodies in ASEAN has already stipulated within 5 years, no more than 10 ppm. So that's one of the general concern about using materials that still contain acids of ES, and consumers are also sharing information about this material. So on the other hand, why amino acid based surfactants such as your glutamate and alanine, etc.? That's because amino acid surfactant uses feedstock of fatty acid together with amino acids. And what is the main impurities or byproducts after the manufacturing process? It is amino acid, fatty acid, and sodium chloride. All of it does not harm us. There's no carcinogenic effect from either of these main impurities. So with that kind of explain to us why the drive to move away from sulfated products into a natural products is because of a safety concern that we observe during COVID-19 period and post-COVID. Even right now, I think more consumers are concerned about protecting themselves using the right formulation, right products, right ingredients. So that's one of the reasons why they are seeking products that has much more higher natural origin content. Of course, another bit is also with regards to sustainability of raw materials. We want to protect Earth much more over the last few years. And one interesting thing to note is for our amino acid surfactants, we do not use organic solvent. So it is a very green process. So if I take a look at the product that's launched within the last few years and what is anticipated in the future, we can see one thing that amino acid surfactants, be it your glutamate, sarcosinates, taurate, glycinate, alanine, etc., all of them point us to one direction. They are slowly replacing materials that are deemed not so natural. And that is not only because it has a greener term, but it is also because it has a safer aspect to it. So we can tell consumers are very interested in safety aspect of their formulation nowadays. So one of the formulation that we'll share here is a facial cleanser. This is made from water and amino acid, sodium cocoa glutamate, as well as sodium cocoa glycinate, which is a mixture of amino acid alone as a cleansing. There's no SLES or any of the SLS in this formulation, which make it much more safer. So what the customer had claimed after that is sulfate free. Sulfate free allows for a safer use of product, as well as because we are using amino acid surfactants, suppliers are able, or the manufacturers are able to label them as antimicrobial effect. Likewise, the trend for sulfate-free material extend beyond just personal care as well. One example I see here, it is with regards to our oral care products. And taking a look at this is a glutamate toothpaste. So traditionally, we've been using sodium lauryl sulfate in our product SLS, but now they are replacing it with amino acid surfactants, allowing us to claim for sulfate free because we know that the natural products are also milder than the traditional SLS, SLES, etc. Their claim is also all to give you a more natural and healthier smile, because there are already studies that show that amino acid surfactants are much more milder than traditional products. Finally, Another interesting aspect we observe about the consumers post-COVID-19 is that they do want to travel. In fact, I think many people are looking forward to moving out of their house to take a break post-COVID-19. So they will travel, but how they travel is going to be a bit more different nowadays. They have the intention to make their travel a much more richer experience, but in smaller numbers. So they might be traveling, backpacking much more. They might just go out with one or two friends, go somewhere much more exotic, for example, to travel on their own. So they are likely to be more well stocked, more well prepared, more well traveled for their experience. So for this group of nomadic travelers who will be up and coming post COVID-19, they want to travel. They would have their the youngsters we know they are starting to have much more eco-friendly attitude. They want to feel that they are contributing to the eco-friendly movement. They want to stay safe still, but at the same time they want to travel light. So a lot of focus is travel ready products for themselves to keep them safe when they travel. So for this is an example of a shampoo bar formulation. This formulation also make use of a amino acid surfactants, which is your sodium cocoa glutamate. So this particular chemistry allow you to have a very soap, clean, dry, soft feel on the skin after you use it. And there's a lot of advantages when you travel. You don't want to feel that after washing you still don't feel clean, etc. You want a very easy shower. You want to feel relaxed after a days of traveling. So such material works very well. On another aspect is that after using it, your skin feel much more moisturized after use. So there are some data that we like to share. So for example, if I compare the foaming aspect, just the performance between the traditional sodium lauryl ether sulfate SLES together with the different amino acid surfactants such as sodium lauryl glutamate, sodium cocoa glutamate, and sodium cocoa alaniate, etc., we find that the foam itself is much more finer and much more creamier when you use it. So there's one advantages when I carry products that contains amino acid surfactants. It gives me a much more better showering experience or shampooing experience. Next thing that we find out, this is a studies done. We know that when after we use SLES, sodium lauryl ether sulfate, for our body wash, etc., there's always the feeling that you don't feel that clean. You will have to rinse it again. And in fact, if you rinse your hand after washing with SLES, you might still see bubbles because sodium lauryl ether sulfate tends to attach to the skin very strongly. But one study that we have found out is we have added sodium cocoa glutamate into a standard formulation that contains SLES. So what does the result show us? In fact, with the different amount of addition for your amino acid surfactants, we find that the absorption of SLES onto the skin become much lower as you see progressively getting smaller. That's a bit surprising to us also. Why? Because bear in mind that the amount of SLES did not change. We did not replace SLES with amino acid. In fact, we added amino acid surfactants to the SLES formulation. It means one thing. There's much more surfactants within the same formulation. But yet at the same time, when we wash it with our skin, we find that there's actually less surfactants that is sticking onto our skin. Even though I have much more amount of amino acid surfactants. So why is that so? Because amino acid surfactants is able to affect the micellar structure, within the surfactants formulation. So in other words, there's not so many free surfactants that is in the solution that might attack and attach onto your skin. So even though I've added more amino acid surfactants, there's going to be less and less SLES that is going to be attached onto my skin, giving me a much more clean feel rather than I will always have a slippery feel after showering because there's SLES residue on my skin. So besides the moisturizing effect, there's besides the absorption effect, there's also a moisturizing aspect for sodium cocoa glutamate or any of the amino acid surfactants. If I take a look here, this shows me the effect of adding a sodium cocoa glutamate into the same SLES containing formulation. And then what is the moisturizing effect measured by our skin capacity, which is the amount of water that can be retained, etc. How much water there is. So we do find that when I have a formulation that contains amino acid surfactants, there's much higher moisturizing of my skin. So another aspect, so just now we talked about SLES. When we use it in our formulation, it tends to stick onto our skin much more often. So in other words, we will take much more time to shower ourselves, to clean ourselves each time during our shampoo or body wash. But with the use of amino acid surfactants, we would always be able to use less water. So in other words, it gives us a better rinsing for my formulation. And that's important, especially when we travel. After a long day of traveling, perhaps I might just want to go back to rest. So I don't want to spend a very long time trying to clean myself. This amino acid surfactants formulation allows me to very effectively clean myself, giving me a very good feel, giving me a very moisturized skin in a very, very short time. I just need I need less water, less time to do the same cleaning. And that happens for both the shampoo as well as body wash. It gives me the same results. So it is at least around 40% much more effective. So think of the amount of time and effort you can save cleaning yourself with amino acid surfactants. So with that, I'll conclude by saying that post COVID-19, what does sustainability means to us? It tells us a few things. It tells us that consumers are going to be much more conscientious in their personal hygiene, which they are interested in maybe paper soap formulation. There's definitely going to be a rising personal care awareness. So consumers are looking into sulfate-free formulation that contains natural product. Amino acid surfactants tends to have 100% natural content, which really fit into what they are looking for, especially when there is information that shared that it contains no harmful impurities, such as dioxin, such as methanol, no such materials. And the last bit, consumers are much more willing to travel post COVID-19. How they travel is going to be different. They might just want to carry one product with them when they travel anywhere. They might be going to a desert or any of the faraway place, but they still want to keep themselves clean. They want to protect themselves better. Just using one single product, amino acid surfactants will help as well, because not only it has the sulfate-free cream, which prevents any harmful ingredients, but importantly, they have antimicrobial efficacy as well, which helps to protect them much better. Okay, with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. There are some questions in the chat box. Let me read for you. Okay, amino acid surfactant is anionic, cationic, or non-ionic?
Amino acid surfactants are the anionic material. So how you formulate with amino acid surfactants is actually quite similar in this aspect with SLES, where SLES is also anionic. So they serve the same cleansing purposes.
Is it sufficient to use only amino acid surfactant without biocide in the formulation for antibacterial product?
That's a good point. In fact, if we look at it, the test itself is only based on amino acid surfactants. There's no other biocides added. This is just the bacteria, yeast or mold, together with one single surfactant. It can be the sodium lauryl glutamate, sodium cocoa glutamate, or the sodium cocoa glycinate. These are the different chemistry for amino acid, but they point to the same thing. It will still inhibit. There's no additional biocides added in order to suppress the bacteria, etc.
Okay. How do you measure absorption of SLES?
There's a couple of ways to do it. Right now, this is based on the instrumental, so we can share. This is a paper actually done in Germany, so we can actually provide the same paper, but this is based on instrumental. There's another way of doing it, which is actually simpler. One thing you do, you wash your hands with SLES formulation. After you dry it, you re-wash your hands. Will you find bubbles? I will bet with you most of the time you will still find bubbles. And why is there bubbles still after you have rinsed your hand already? It's because there's bound to be some residual SLES that is sticking to your hands. We know SLES material, sodium lauryl sulfate, tends to stick onto skin pretty well. They have a very good skin absorption ability, but that's not so good for sensitive skin, especially because any residual SLES on your skin tends to irritate the skin, which is what we don't want.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is by instrumental.
Another question is, how significant the Zine score 67 SLES and 59 for glutamate?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, let me also explain a bit about Zine score itself. What is Zine score? Zine score is basically a protein solubilization test. What it does is it takes a single strain of protein. This protein is very similar to our protein that we find on our skin, etc., keratin kind of protein. And then we solubilize together with a surfactant. So we have done the test for different surfactants, which is including sodium lauryl sulfate, sodium olefin sulfate, etc., all the way for my amino acid surfactants. So if the surfactants is a harsh material, it will affect our protein much more, or effectively it will denature my protein much more, which we measure. So out of all these surfactants, we find that SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate, is the harshest, denoted by 100. Then for the rest of the material, you can see what is their, of course, the lower the score, the less irritancy you expect from the surfactants. Between 67 and 59, I would say that the amino acid is still a bit milder than the traditional SLES in comparison. Okay, and a lot of time it depends on what concentration will we be finally formulating with, and on what kind of application. Are we going to put it into a facial wash, which is near towards our sensitive eyes area, or are we going to put it into a body wash or shampoo? So these results does point out to the irritation level. And one thing that we are assured that for a higher score, it tends to irritate more. But for which aspect does it irritate more? It depends on the area. Are you talking about the skin? Are you talking about hair, etc.? But one of the recent tests that I've seen is for between, let's say, SLES and amino acid, which is a difference of maybe like how many units is that? around 8 units.
Yeah.
So yeah, so when I talk about the hair itself, we know that a lot of people color their hair, for example. So how fast does the hair color fade off if you are using SLES versus the amino acid surfactants? I would say that within the next like 3 to 5 washes using SLES, we tend to see color starting to fade. Whereas for glutamate itself or amino acid surfactants, it might take you between 10 to 20 washes. So that is the kind of difference for hair itself. Of course, if you talk about eyes, there can be other studies to say how much does it irritate the eye, etc. But that information we have to find out also. Yeah, but this it points out to a general direction about the mildness itself. But with respect to a specific mildness effect, it has to be dependent on which application area are we talking about.
Okay. And next question is, what is Zine score for CDE or CMEA?
That let us check and then get back to you, because offhand I don't have this information with me as well, but I'm pretty sure this information is available in the literature that we can provide. Yeah.
SLES is good for viscosity builder. What about amino acid?
Yep, that's one point about amino acid surfactants, because for SLES we traditionally know that they are much better viscosity builders than any of the amino acid out in the market. So amino acid surfactants, still there's a few ways. The original perception when we use amino acid surfactants is it cannot thicken well. One of the key reasons is because amino acid doesn't thicken well with salt. So you can't add salt into a formulation like what you do with SLES. SLES, you add salt, it thickens. So you can see the effect very easily. Whereas amino acid surfactants, there's a few key things we look at when we talk about thickening it. First of all, you have to figure out which thickener to use, which we can share through our sales team. And then we cannot add salt, but we can adjust in terms of pH. There's always an optimal pH to consider when we're adjusting for the thickness. That works pretty well for the different amino acid surfactants. So these are some of the key considerations. So SLES does thicken better because it can simply be thickened by salt. But also bear in mind that salt itself is an irritant. So by adding salt, you're actually adding irritant to a formulation as well.
Okay. How much dosage you use for the test against bacteria? Effective dosage for antibacterial agent.
So for that, the results that we have, this is the amount in terms of the ppm level. So we know ppm is really milligram per gram. So this is not a very huge amount. So data are here for the different bacteria, yeast, and mold, of course. And we will share this data out. So no worry, you all can actually refer to it after that.
Okay. Another question is, does the standard dosage of amino acid surfactant in the formulation already meet MIC for mentioned microbial?
Oh yeah, most of it, if you observe, the testing is done by ppm level. But when we add into a formulation, it's usually in terms of percent already, because for any of the cleansing formulation, in order to get sufficient foam to make it feel that this formulation works well, it's likely that even for body wash, you might have around 7% active, for example. And in some countries, it's mandatory for your body wash to be at least 7%. If not, you violate the law. So it will definitely fit into this ppm level.
Okay. Do you have soap formulation that can be claimed as natural with the natural index calculation?
Yes. This we can provide the calculation for this particular material. If you take a look at this material, You have the fatty acid, which all of them are natural. It's either from your coconut sauce or your palm sauce, natural. You have your amino acid surfactants, which is also natural. So all this already the natural index can be provided. Glycerin, yes, it's likely that you can get it from a natural source as well. So it's natural. Propylene glycol, no. But yes, you are able to calculate how much percentage of natural for any of the fatty acid soap product in the market right now. We can assist you if you have any specific formulation you like us to work with. Let us know. We can get back to you. Yeah, so this is a very more and more common. This one I see the biggest driver right now is by Johnson & Johnson. J&J actually now lists their products in terms of exactly how many percent natural that is their product. So maybe that will be a trend in the future from the MNC Unilever also.
Okay. How come amino acid surfactants save water? Is it less bubble volume or not slippery when we wash with water?
A lot of time, why does this amino acid surfactants works better is because if we know any of the surfactants in a formulation, they will form a structure which we call a micelle. It's a micellar structure in any formulation. This micelle is important because it helps to do the cleansing aspect. It helps to increase viscosity. It helps to do a lot of the different things. Why surfactants can clean, why surfactants can thicken is because of the micellar structure. And when I have amino acid surfactants added to the same formulation, it changes the way the structure looks like. So the way the micelles pack themselves are going to be different. So effectively, that you allow much more micelles to be packed together within the solution. So there's not many free surfactants. Whereas SLES, due to a structure, there's always some amount of your surfactants that is not forming a micellar. In fact, they are called free surfactants. And these free surfactants, because they are not sticking into a micellar structure, they have a very high probability of sticking onto your skin. So that is why this SLES sticks well to the.
Okay. In order to decrease foam in the formulation, can we combine amino acid surfactant with APG or ethoxylated linear alcohol? How is the cleaning performance?
Want to decrease the foam, I think a few things. If you add any surfactants beyond a certain percentage, it will increase foam, even if you add the other material. So one thing you should look at is the total dosage of your surfactants in it. Keep it at a lower level. That will help to decrease your foam. So you basically don't have to. And in the first place, amino acid surfactants foam tend to be much more creamier and denser. So you do not expect a lot of big bubbles. So that might help in terms of your foam aspect already. For APG and everything, if you add it in, it will still be able to increase the foam. So do keep the surfactants level a bit lower. That will help first.
Okay.
It's just how creamy it is. Yeah.
For hair care product, which type of amino acid surfactant has the best result in terms of moisturizing effect on hair after use? Do you have any application data for each type of amino acid surfactant on hair?
For the different type of amino acid surfactants for each of them, let us check. But I see in the market right now, the two most popular one, actually the most popular one would be the glutamate chemistry that's being used in the market right now. It's one of the most commonly used in the Northeast Asia market, which is glutamate chemistry for hair care in particular. So they do have the data that supports the wet combing, dry combing, and the moisturizing effect on the hair, etc. So that's very hair related. Another new chemistry that we do observe, there are more papers has been published nowadays, is the alanine chemistry. But this is still a relatively new chemistry in the hair care. So the most commonly used and with the studies involved would be the glutamate at this moment. We do have some Sinolion information, the PPT for the hair care, which please contact our sales. They will email to you the PPT itself for hair care. I remember there's a module on it.
Yeah. Okay. What type of thickener that compatible to amino acid surfactant?
There are different type of the thickeners that we know of. The most common one is your xenon gum. It works, and then we have maybe the polymeric type, like the PEG 120 distearate type. Also, it works pretty well. So there are different kind of ways of thickening it. Yeah, so these are the few most common one that we know, which is already out in the market, very common. Denim gum, your PG distearate, etc.
Okay. How about the effectiveness against viruses?
You mean the amino acid or
Yeah,
the?
amino acid surfactant. I think because just now you show the bacteria one. So this Linda is asking
Okay.
about for viruses.
For viruses, right? Unfortunately, the last information that we had is they are still testing, so we are also waiting for the results. So at this moment, I think everyone is concerned whether the amino acid surfactants will also work against the envelope virus, which is COVID-19 actually, because COVID-19 is a type of envelope virus. At this moment, I don't have the data to share, but one thing to note, envelope virus is actually much more easy to remove than the other type of viruses. So there's a good chance that it might work. Just have to wait for the data.
Okay, one more. Talk about thickener. Is the amino acid surfactant good with cellulose type thickener?
Have not been really not too many people have been using the cellulose thickener together with the amino acid surfactants, but in the right ratio, yes, I believe it can work also. Because a lot of times when you want to thicken, exactly how much amino acid surfactants you are adding in. I do see some of the formulation, they contain a mixture of, let's say, betaine together with your amino acid surfactants and any of the thickener, it still works. So there's no reason to point out that cellulose does not work. But of course, why people are not using cellulose so often in their formulation is because of the flowability of your material after you use it. Because when you pour materials that have contain cellulose thickener, it tends to be a bit more lumpy. It doesn't flow so smoothly down. So I guess that's the reason why people don't use it so often, and there's not a lot of conclusive information on that. But nonetheless, there's no information that points cellulose will not work. In fact, I think cellulose should work because their thickening mechanism is based on a swelling mechanism, a bit similar to your dentin gum. So that is rather independent of a surfactant.
Okay, another question from Linda. How long effective amino acid surfactant kill bacteria after application to skin?
At this moment, based on the data we see, right, we have tested up to the 28 days mark, and then it seems to be effective. So that's what we observe right now. But then again, we wash ourselves every day, so likely that it will be protected as long as we do daily washing.
If there's no more question, we'll end this webinar. This PowerPoint slide will send to you by our sales representative. You can also look for our sales rep if you have any other question, or if you need further technical discussion with Joseph. Please contact our sales rep. We can arrange also. Okay. Thank you and hope to see you soon in Indonesia.